Number 9. Metra train cars in California. For years, a collection of aging bi-level rail cars that were once used as passenger trains could be seen sitting along the Carrizo Gorge Railway, which straddles the border between California and Mexico. They're completely covered in graffiti and rust, and have reportedly been at their current site near Dubber Spur in California since 2007 or earlier. While it's unclear what the cars were used for, it's been speculated that they were purchased from Metra for use as a passenger line along the railway that now functions as their final resting place. And for years they sat parked on the spur alongside the main rail. In 2015, several of the Metro cars derailed in what's been described as a suspicious incident. They were also stripped of their brakes, shocks, and other parts, leading many to suspect that the cars had been sabotaged. In an email obtained by the San Diego Reader, Carrizo Gorge Police Chief Mark Langley told executives at Pacific Imperial Railroad that they needed to get the damaged cars off the track immediately. He then explained that they could potentially damage the railroad, which is used regularly by commuter trains. Langley went on to describe the situation as a major public safety issue, stating that people could be harmed or killed if proper action wasn't taken. One rail enthusiast speculated in a social media post that the suspected saboteur appeared to have tampered with the rail switch, causing the cars to roll backward onto the main track, at which point they derailed. Some even suspected that the person who caused the derailment did so in an attempt to block the main line. The railroad has allegedly been shrouded in allegations of fraud and cover-ups for years, leading some to feel as though the situation could be better understood if there was less secrecy surrounding the railroad, period. Of course, most of the suspicions surrounding the alleged corruption and shady dealings point toward money as a motivating factor. According to one social media user, news of the incident only caused further problems by drawing more unruly and disrespectful visitors to the site. Eventually, though, the cars were removed from the property due to the ongoing issues. Several were scrapped while others were transported to more secure locations. Then in 2018, the damaged section of railroad was rebuilt, but the identity of the person responsible for the damages and their reasons for doing so remain a mystery to this day. Number 8. Scottish Ghost Town. In East Ayrshire, Scotland, there's a collection of 16 dilapidated homes that were once worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each. Only 3 of them are occupied, while the rest have been left to decay at the hands of Mother Nature. Construction on the neighborhood, known as the Woolmill Place, began in 2007, but the project stopped suddenly and the partially built houses were abandoned. Walls were left half-painted and plastered, along with toilets and baths that were never fitted into place. A company bought the development shortly after it was deserted, but the handful of residents who moved into the few completed homes claimed that nothing has been done to work towards finishing the rest of the houses. Residents are understandably outraged now that they're stuck living in a rotting ghost town after being promised a nice community. One homeowner told the Daily Record that if the current owner isn't going to do anything with the property, the least they could do is sell it to someone who will. It's a fair request, but as of August 2023, there appear to be no imminent plans to finish and sell the houses. Number 7. Rochester Subway. Home to roughly 210,000 residents, Rochester is New York State's third largest major city. During the 1920s, a 7-mile light rail line was built in the bed of the old Erie Canal to alleviate the heavy street-level traffic that came with the city's growing population. And 2 miles of the transit line ran below the streets like a traditional subway. The system operated from 1927 until 1956. It was shut down due to overwhelming operating costs and low ridership, as commuters traded in their train passes for car ownership. Over the years, many of the tunnels were filled in, but some of the passageways remain, including a stretch of tunnel that runs beneath Broad Street. It's against the law for civilians to explore the abandoned space, but curious visitors find their way inside from time to time. The tunnel walls are covered with over 100 colorful murals, courtesy of local graffiti artist Justin Suarez. People are drawn to the old subway not out of a desire to cause trouble, but because they appreciate its history and its lasting impact on the local culture. At the same time, its neglected state reflects the hard times that fell on Rochester during and after the end of America's industrial era, which the city remains affected by to this day. Number 6. Foreshore Freeway Bridge. In Cape Town, South Africa, there's a span of elevated highway that simply stops in midair, and it's been that way for more than 45 years. Known as the Foreshore Freeway Bridge, and perhaps better known by its nickname, the Unfinished Bridge, the structure was intended to be part of a new highway that was designed to relieve traffic congestion. Construction began in the early 1970s and came to an abrupt halt in 1977. The project was abandoned due to budget issues, and the partially built overpass has languished in plain sight ever since. To this day, the city council remains undecided on what to do with it. In the meantime, it's become a popular tourist destination and a movie set. In 2012, there was a contest challenging local college students to come up with an affordable plan for the unfinished bridge. 600 people entered, and officials were still unable to settle on a decision. More recently, in 2018, plans were put forth to complete the bridge, but the project fell apart before construction could even begin due to contractor-related issues. For now, the unfinished bridge continues to languish with an uncertain future as it functions as little more than Cape Town's proverbial elephant in the room. Number 5. Project Riese. Between 1943 and 1945, the Nazis built 7 large underground tunnels in the Owl Mountains, which are located in modern-day Poland. The project was never finished, though, and its purpose remains a mystery to this day due to lack of surviving documentation. Like many of Nazi Germany's construction projects, the tunnels were built by forced laborers, many of whom died due to disease, malnutrition, and violence at the hands of their captors. Researchers have estimated that anywhere from 8,000 to 13,000 concentration camp prisoners were forced to work on the project. Construction was still in its early stages when the tunnels were abandoned in various stages of completion, and altogether roughly 5.6 miles of tunnels were created, but it's believed that the network was planned to be much larger. Some have speculated that the complex was intended as one of Adolf Hitler's headquarters, with nearby Schage Castle serving as his dedicated living quarters. It was almost most likely meant to function as a series of underground factories, where the Nazis hoped to carry out a large-scale production of war material without being seen by the Allies. Today, some of the tunnels are open to visitors, who often find that the sites feel eerily frozen in time, seemingly untouched since their desertion nearly 80 years ago. If you were in charge of a secret operation, what code name would you give it? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. Number 4. State Guest Mansions. In the hills surrounding the city of Shenyang in northeastern China, there's a ghost town filled with 260 partially built mansions that have sat abandoned for over a decade. Construction on the development, known as the State Guest Mansions, began in 2010 and abruptly stopped 2 years later. While it's unclear exactly why the developer threw in the towel, some locals blame government corruption. A farmer who lives nearby told the media outlet AFP that authorities cracked down on uncontrolled housing developments and easy access to loans, resulting in a funding cutoff that forced the project to stall. Abandoned neighborhoods that were never finished being built are such a common sight in China that there's even a name for them: rotten tail homes. These deserted developments have been appearing for years throughout the country, and yet new neighborhoods and even entire cities are being built at lightning speed. Even in cases where construction is completed, getting people to relocate has often proven to be a challenge. Newly built settlements that were meant to be thriving urban centers are often mere ghost towns. In the more than 10 years since the plug was pulled on the state guest mansions, nearby farmers and their livestock have reclaimed the land for their own use. Cows roam freely in spaces that were once meant for freshly paved streets, and fences have been built in the yards of homes that were originally intended for millionaires. Some of the more completed houses are filled with lavish fixtures, including chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling pillars, and enormous picture windows. Front entrances are also marked by empty water fountains and overgrowth. It's unclear whether there are plans to finish or demolish the post-apocalyptic neighborhood, or if it's destined to meet the same fate as many other ghost towns throughout China and slowly succumb to the elements. Number 3. Block 37 Superstation. During the early 2000s, Chicago officials brainstormed for ways to alleviate the hopelessly congested traffic on the roads leading to and from O'Hare Airport. One potential solution was to build dedicated train lines for shuttling travelers between the airport and the heart of the city. So in 2006, construction began on a so-called superstation beneath the famous Block 37 in Chicago's Loop District. Located beneath a shopping center, the enormous underground space came at a cost of $200 million to taxpayers. According to estimates, funding an entire train line would cost anywhere from $771 million to $1.5 billion. Not surprisingly, the project failed to gain enough traction to go anywhere. The so-called superstation is nothing more than a giant concrete basement that serves no practical use. Those who managed to gain a first-hand look at the space can instantly tell that it was built with big plans in mind. But it's closed to the public and nothing more than a dark void that will likely never be used. In fact, only a handful of people have ever seen the superstation that never was. Included among the lucky few was a local Cranes journalist, Greg Hines, who described the unfinished station as absolutely wacko and a concrete shell. More specifically, he called the site an endless dark space with big, high pillars. Hines summed up his thoughts on the abandoned project in a less than flattering term, stating, "Somebody in power wanted it, so they did it." Number 2. Spain's unfinished housing developments. If you're old enough to remember the 2008 recession, you'll likely recall hard times falling upon the entire globe. But some countries were affected worse than others, and Spain was one of the hardest-hit nations during the crisis. During the 1990s and early 2000s, Spain experienced rapid economic growth, which was accompanied by a major housing boom. More homes were built in the country than France, Germany, and the UK combined, and Spain boasted a higher home ownership rate than any other country in the European Union. Houses were still being built when the market went bust practically overnight. Construction ground to a screeching halt, and an estimated 3.4 million homes were left empty. And among those homes, around 500,000 of them were only partially built. For years, unemployment plagued the country, to the point where many young people gave up hope of finding jobs, while others left for better prospects elsewhere. In the meantime, the unfinished housing simply sat with no solid plans in place for its future. Over a 10-year period, photographer Marco Redondo photographed these eerily deserted sites for his Sandcastles project. The images showed neatly lined rows of houses with gaping holes where windows and doors were never installed, and crumbling brick walls. There were also pictures of cement staircases, empty swimming pools, and cul-de-sacs where one would normally expect to see children playing, completely devoid of any sign of human life. In recent years, the Spanish government has taken action to turn some of the country's vacant homes into affordable housing. But many of the unfinished developments remain just as they were left more than 15 years ago. They're now in worse condition, though, as they slowly start to crumble from the effects of time and nature. Number 1. North Carolina's Road to Nowhere. During World War II, the U.S. federal government flooded thousands of acres of land in North Carolina's Smoky Mountains to create Fontana Dam. The structure was built in an effort to meet the increasing energy demands of the war effort, and it remains in use today. Unfortunately, though, an entire town called Judson was located on the floodplain, leaving its residents with no choice but to move before the reservoir began to fill. In addition to leaving the homes that had belonged to some families for generations, the people of Judson left behind cemeteries where their loved ones were buried and other beloved fixtures of their town. The government vowed to make sure that these families would have continued access to their ancestral lands by promising to build a 30-mile road to the area. But by the time the 1970s rolled around, less than 7 miles of the road had been built. Construction never resumed, and the road ends abruptly in a tunnel in the side of a mountain. Infamously dubbed the Road to Nowhere, the unfinished pass serves as a sore reminder of the sacrifices their ancestors made based on the government's false promises. In 2018, the county agreed to drop its demands for the road to be finished in exchange for a $52 million payout. Number 7. Airlander 10. The Airlander 10 tells the story of a design that's unintentionally hilarious. According to the airport technology website, the Airlander 10 is an ultra-low-emission aircraft capable of cutting GHG from long-haul and short-haul flights by 90% according to HAV, based on reimagining the 20th century airship. The Airlander 10 will one day be able to take 200 passengers on a journey up to 1,400 miles away. While this sounds like an incredible project, the outward appearance of the Airlander 10 has earned it a less than flattering nickname. Known as the Flying Bum, the Airlander 10 earned this name after photos of the ship were shared on social media websites. While the ship is getting publicity for its look, it's not actually ready for service just yet. Some news reports say that the Airlander 10 might debut in 2025 or 2027. For now, it's still the butt of jokes on social media. Number 6. The Hyatt Regency Hotel Skywalk Disaster. On July 17, 1981, the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Kansas City, Missouri, held a huge event called a tea dance for residents. It was supposed to be a fun, lively indoor event held from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., which provided citizens with an escape from the intense Kansas City summer heat. Those who attended enjoyed refreshments, food, music, and dancing in the Hyatt Regency Hotel's open-air atrium. It was still a relatively new building that featured impressive indoor skywalks. Those skywalks spanned across the hotel, and it appeared as if they were almost floating in the air. They were designed to wow and amaze guests immediately as they walked into the atrium. There were 3 skywalks total in the hotel above the atrium. People thought they were amazing sights in the Hyatt Regency Hotel. The walkways were 120 feet long, and they weighed about 36 tons each. But those skywalks had a dirty, hidden secret. Their construction involved poor decisions and major corners being cut. They were nothing more than hanging, ticking time bombs. On July 17, 1981, 1,500 people were having fun, enjoying the tea dance when tragedy hit around 7:05 p.m. 2 of the skywalks suddenly collapsed and crashed into the atrium below. People at the event quickly launched into action. They tried searching for victims under the mess of concrete, steel, and glass that rained down. First responders arrived at the scene as fast as possible. Kansas City hospitals were overwhelmed with an influx of victims with injuries. The hospitals soon realized that they needed large amounts of blood for transfusions. To meet the need, the people of Kansas City stepped up to the plate after hearing of the disaster. They made their way to several locations to donate their blood, with some waiting up to 3 hours to donate. Back at the hotel, first responders called in reinforcements. Construction equipment and experienced crews were called in to move the wreckage that pinned victims down. Heavy machinery was first used to try and remove the entrance to the hotel so they could get the large equipment inside the Hyatt Regency. The clock was ticking to get to those that were still trapped, though. Crews soon realized that their equipment wasn't able to lift the tons of debris. Luckily, a construction site was nearby and cranes were brought in to try and lift the rubble. The crews then started moving the wreckage. Meanwhile, a conference room in the hotel had to be used as a makeshift morgue. First responders and others that helped were scarred by the horrifying scene. Crews worked well into the night to save survivors. While the community mourned their losses, there were several pressing questions. Why did the skywalks collapse? An investigation was launched into the disaster at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. A structural engineer and the deferral government were also brought into the investigation. The main issue was traced back to 1979 when the Hyatt Regency Hotel was still under construction. The results were beyond shocking. The designs for the hanger rod connections used in the skywalks were changed last minute. The fabricator and engineering team were in communication, but the rods that held the skywalk up were changed, and the result was dangerous. The rods were installed, but they couldn't properly hold the intense weight of the skywalks. They also didn't meet code requirements and somehow were still installed. If just one of the rods failed, they'd all fail, and that's exactly how the 1981 disaster occurred. During the construction of the hotel in 1979, a portion of the roof collapsed. The connections in the roof failed, and this should have been a warning sign for those involved in the construction. But construction continued without a care. It was November 1984 when the structural engineers were finally found guilty of gross negligence. 40 years after the disaster, a memorial to the victims was erected in Kansas City. The memorial is located near what once was the Hyatt Regency Hotel. Number 5. The St. Francis Dam. The St. Francis Dam was situated 40 miles northwest of Los Angeles, California, in the San Francisco Canyon of the Sierra Pelona Mountains. Built between 1924 and 1926, the dam's main purpose was to serve as a storage reservoir for the Los Angeles aqueduct system. William Mulholland oversaw the construction. Described as a self-taught engineer, Mulholland supervised embankment dams being built all over California. But the St. Francis Dam was a different, unique type of project. It was a concrete gravity dam that was a first for Mulholland. The project was plagued by countless poor decisions made by Mulholland and his associates. The design of the dam wasn't even right for the location. The wrong kind of concrete was also used in its structure. Changes to the size of the dam during construction threatened the stability to hold water in the reservoir. Having someone or a group come in to study the stability and then making necessary changes would have been costly, so nothing was done to address these pressing issues. Cracks were also discovered in the dam but were simply dismissed as typical dam cracks. On March 12, 1928, the dam collapsed entirely and unleashed over 12 billion gallons of water that was held in the reservoir. The rushing water created a 140-foot wave of destruction. Over 400 people were killed, and it was reported that bodies were discovered as far south as Mexico. The dam was never rebuilt after the initial disaster. Investigations were made, and Mulholland went on to admit, "Don't blame anyone else. You know, you can just fasten it on me. If there was human error, I was the human." Have you ever heard of any other major engineering mistakes? Let us know in the comments below, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. Number 4. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge was finished in 1940 and allowed people to drive from Tacoma, Washington to the Kitsap Peninsula, which spanned over Puget Sound. It was the third largest suspension bridge in the world, measuring 2,800 feet in length. Construction started in 1938, and those who worked on the bridge said it would sometimes move during windy weather. The bridge was soon referred to as Galloping Gertie by workers. Tragedy soon struck on November 7, 1940. A windstorm with gusts reaching up to 42 miles per hour saw the bridge basically twist from side to side. The bridge eventually snapped and collapsed in on itself. What's amazing is that the incident was captured on film. Also, not a single person died. Cars were on the bridge, but people found a way to get off the bridge to safety before the collapse. The last person on the bridge was a man named Leonard Coatsworth. He was traveling with his pet dog when the bridge started cracking and the road swayed from side to side. Sadly, Coatsworth couldn't save his dog and had to crawl to safety. Some people tried to go back to the car to save the animal, but Coatsworth's dog was too terrified to move and even bit one of the people trying to help. Sadly, the bridge collapsed, taking the dog with it. This horrible event was investigated not long after it took place. The American Society of Engineers explained the issue. The strength caused by the motion eventually surpassed the strength of the suspender cables, snapping them one by one until the remainder were unable to support the mass of the bridge. What was the engineering mistake? The bridge was built with plate girders to support the roadbed, but it should have been built using web trusses. The web trusses would have done a better job of absorbing turbulence caused by wind gusts. This disastrous event would change the way suspension bridges were designed and built forever. The miracle of the incident is not a single human was killed. The bridge was later reopened in 1950, and a second bridge was built right next to it in 2007. Number 3, the 2017 Oroville Dam incident. Another California dam was in the news was the Oroville Dam situated southeast of Chico in Oroville. This dam was developed after some catastrophic flooding took place in the Yuba City area during the 1950s. Finished in 1967, the Oroville Dam was used for flood control, among other duties. The water it held was from Lake Oroville, the second largest reservoir in the state of California. Things eventually took a turn for the worse on February 11, 2017. It had been a wet year, and the spillway at the Oroville Dam was meant to be used for the first time since the dam had been built. The spillway allows extra water to be released and diverted somewhere else in a safe manner. But there was a major problem. On February 7, 2017, a massive hole in the main spillway was seen. Water was then sent down the spillway, and the situation got even worse. A case study of the incident stated, "This was immediately followed by a rapid erosion of the foundation and adjacent ground, and progressive failure and removal of the chute slab in upstream and downstream directions." After hearing the news, officials decided to open the emergency spillway. That also caused major damage to the earthen embankment and caused more concerns on top of everything else. If things got to a critical point, the released water would be left practically uncontrolled. If this were the case, the damage would have been catastrophic. There were residents in Oroville and surrounding communities that were directly in the path of the water if the situation turned into a disaster. About 188,000 people were evacuated as a precautionary safety measure because water still had to be released. In the end, the damage led to $1.1 billion in repairs and cleanup. A report on the investigation said the following: "The incident was fundamentally the result of a long-term systemic failure to recognize and properly address the deficiencies and warning signs which preceded the incident. It was also discovered that the person who designed the spillway was inexperienced, and their design didn't match up with the best design practices at the time." Number 2, Chernobyl. The worst nuclear accident in world history happened on April 26, 1986. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant was in what was once the Soviet Union and is now modern-day Ukraine. According to the World Nuclear Association, the disaster started during a test to determine how long turbines would spin and supply power to the main circulating pumps following a loss of main electrical power supply. During a test, a reactor grew unstable and an explosion took place. A second explosion then happened, and 2 workers at the power plant were killed. The World Nuclear Association described Chernobyl as the largest uncontrolled radioactive release into the environment ever recorded for any civilian operation, and large quantities of radioactive substances were released into the air for about 10 days. Thousands of people were exposed to harmful radiation, resulting in the confirmed deaths of 28 people. Hundreds of thousands had to be evacuated out of their homes and were never able to return. The exact number of those affected by radiation from this event is unknown, but the lingering radioactivity from the fallout remains in the area to this day. So what happened? A flawed reactor design paired with the poorly trained staff led to the explosion. The reactors didn't have a containment structure. That's a concrete and steel dome that covers the top of the reactor. They're designed to keep radiation inside the plant in case there's ever an accident. Over 500,000 people were involved in the cleanup efforts at Chernobyl. One of their duties was building the sarcophagus, which entombed the reactor site. It was built to contain the remaining radioactive material. And at number 1, the Surfside condominium collapse. At 1:22 a.m. on June 24, 2021, there was a partial building collapse at the Champlain Towers South condominium located in Surfside, Florida. 98 people were killed in the accident. The condominium was 12 stories tall and was part of a 3-building complex. Champlain Towers South was the oldest of the 3 buildings and was built in 1981. Champlain Towers North was built a year later in 1982, with the most recent building being Champlain Towers East, built in 1994. First responders were called to the scene after the initial collapse. Over 30 people were discovered alive in the rubble with varying injuries. Search and rescue teams from Mexico and Israel joined in on the search efforts. The community also reached out in any way possible to help victims and their families recover from the traumatizing incident. What went wrong here? An investigation showed that the concrete columns and the pool deck in the Champlain Towers South were not properly built. An investigator said the design of the structure at Champlain Towers South failed to meet the codes and standards applicable at the time of the original construction, and also would not meet current codes and standards. A year later, in 2022, a federal judge awarded a $1 billion settlement to the families of the victims affected. But a company from Dubai has plans in the works to build a 57-unit building on the previous Champlain Towers South site. The final report about what exactly caused the collapse may not be openly available to the public until as far as 2025. Number 10. Theranos that works. Disgraced biotechnology entrepreneur Elizabeth Holmes ran Theranos, a Silicon Valley company that claimed to have created a machine that would revolutionize blood testing. A simple drop of blood was needed to run the Theranos test, which could detect diseases like diabetes or cancer. The company boasted that they'd be more efficient than a 10 to 15 millimeter vial drawn at a lab, but Theranos was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. The technology didn't even exist, and Holmes was sent to prison after defrauding investors for an astronomical sum of money. But now, Stanford University researchers are making progress in a study to develop what they call Theranos that works. Ironically, it was Stanford where Holmes was a student and dropped out to run Theranos. This project is in the preliminary stages, but a researcher working on the project told the press that they can follow one's metabolic markers, immune markers, and even some neurological markers that may give insights into that person's mental health. So if this machine really works, a far simpler blood test could give doctors insight on diagnosing patients with only a few drops of blood. Number 9. 3D printing surgery. 3D printing is sometimes used in surgeries, but it's about to take a bigger step. Did you know prototypes and patents similar to 3D printing date back to the 1970s? Currently, places like the Mayo Clinic and some VA hospitals in the United States have 3D printing labs, which are used for staff training, medical models, and procedure simulation. And over the years, there have been some impressive advancements. In 2021, a hospital in Sweden was successful in creating a 3D printed skull implant for a patient that suffered a massive head injury. However, the full potential of 3D printing in surgery has yet to be realized. In 2018, healthcare represented 10% of the 3D printing demand. The 3D printing industry could be a $60 billion industry in 2030, and hospitals could reap the benefits. Some tools can be patient-specific, and models can be created to cut down on surgical time. 3D printed organs are somewhere on the horizon, but it could be here sooner than later. Number 8. Brain-computer interface. Does linking your brain to a computer sound cool or frightening? Brain-computer interface, or BCI, is here, and it's used to link a brain with a computer or another device. BCI allows scientists and doctors the ability to work with patients with motor impairment, which is when one of your body parts experiences a partial or total loss. BCI has the ability to be used in fields like rehabilitation, robotics, gaming, and neuroscience. But there's also hope that BCI can be incredibly useful in working with patients that have suffered a stroke, are struggling with mental illness, or dealing with a complicated disease like Parkinson's. And the future of BCI may involve improving the focus and drive of workers. Some companies want to develop devices where they can monitor dangers in the workplace like drowsy driving. There's a super creepy side to BCI as well. The technology could be used to track your awareness at a staff meeting, or it could be used at a business convention to see which booths are of interest to you. This is a bit frightening as it's absolutely intrusive. Also, your password could end up being a simple word you bring up in your head instead of typing it on a computer or smartphone. It's hard to tell how far away that technology is to becoming a reality though, so for now, you can resume pretending to be interested during your next Zoom meeting. Number 7. Nuclear fusion. There is a divide right now on the type of energies we're using or should be using. Coal and natural gas have been the standard, while others debate the environmentally friendly benefits of solar power and wind power. Nuclear power has entered the discussion, but thoughts of another 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl leave many worried about a nuclear meltdown disaster. Scientists are looking to develop a cheap and safe alternative using a process called fusion. But what is fusion? Basically, it's a method where scientists and researchers replicate the way the sun and stars are powered. An energy-producing nuclear reaction is the power source for the sun and the stars. But the downside is that the reaction produces way too much energy. If we can develop a nuclear fusion reaction that produces a small amount of energy in a clean and safe manner, then we'll achieve something huge in creating clean energy with zero carbon emissions. This project is in a very early stage, but a laboratory in California did achieve something known as ignition, where the small amount of energy put into the reaction produced a larger amount of energy. Nuclear power plants today rely on nuclear fission, which means their manner of producing energy results in radioactive waste. And this is another environmental issue when it comes to storage or disposal. Fusion would significantly reduce the radioactive waste. And while fusion is a technology that will have a major impact on the future, it continues to be an incredibly difficult project for scientists. As Omar Hurricane, the chief scientist at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, said, "We're basically making stars on Earth." Number 6. Gene editing. Gene editing or genome editing isn't something that could happen, it's already happening. As a matter of fact, genetic engineering can trace its roots back to 1970. Scientists have the ability to edit DNA, and at the time of this video, there are no known regulations in place for this practice. In 2018, a scientist in China claimed that they edited the DNA of two twin embryos during fertility treatments. Their plan was to make the daughter's genes resistant to HIV. But what was the reason for this? The father was reportedly HIV positive, and the scientist hoped their work would make it more difficult for the twins to contract the virus. This research was criticized as barbaric, but was praised by others. Some wondered if the gene engineering stays with the subject or can be passed from generation to generation. This is a highly controversial subject because it's tied to eugenics. If this science can move forward, then there's a chance that we can eradicate genetic diseases like sickle cell disease or even cystic fibrosis. There may even be a way to prevent blindness and children being born deaf. But could this science be used to create designer human beings? People with perfect features or a certain size? Could it also be used to end certain forms of mental illness or neurological disorders? In truth, the possibilities of this type of science could lead to is monumental. Do you think it's possible that in the next 50 years, it will be more common to have designer babies born in a lab than babies that are born naturally? Let us know what you think in the comments. And while you're at it, subscribe. Number 5. Extended reality. Imagine taking virtual reality and mixing it with other technologies like mixed reality and augmented reality. Then, add some emerging technologies to the mix, and what you get is extended reality or XR. Imagine being in a meeting in Los Angeles, and you go directly to your client's office in London for a meeting using XR so you don't have to leave the office. Data and graphics that were only once visible on a tablet or phone are now easily viewed in the XR world by yourself and your client. Imagine going to see the pyramids in Egypt or the Great Wall of China without leaving your house. Think about it. No more airport lines or waiting forever to get through security or losing your luggage on a flight. You could even walk around major cities and explore national parks and interact with other tourists from around the world. Your favorite artist could tour using XR, and you could easily just pop in and check out the show. It'll be easy to tour homes you want to purchase, and your place of business can use XR technology to train you for new policies or a new device at work, right from the comfort of your home. While all of this sounds amazing, XR isn't cheap, and it's also a technology that can be vulnerable to cyber attacks. But it's a changing technology, and it's possible that we could see some interesting advancements in XR over the next 5 years. Number 4. Xenotransplantation. Xenotransplantation is an experimental treatment that's currently only allowed in extreme cases. But the technology to perform this treatment has been around since 1906. In a nutshell, xenotransplantation is taking non-human cells, tissues, and organs and placing them in a human patient. While this has been attempted in the past, it's been anything but perfect. Changes in technology will advance this practice to a more safe and reliable form of medical care. There are people waiting for organ donors that they really don't have the time to wait. Scientists have been able to transfer the kidneys, heart, or liver of one animal to another, and one animal that might provide this assistance for humans is the pig. Cells and tissues from animals like pigs have the ability to help patients with Parkinson's disease or type 1 diabetes. Tissue or skin from a pig could also be used with burn patients. But why pigs? It's because they're readily available animals, and their organs are about the same size as a human. There's also a low risk of disease due to organ transfer. But of course, this practice isn't without controversy. Animal welfare and even religious beliefs must be taken into consideration before xenotransplantation can be performed. Also, the pig isn't the only animal that's being used for xenotransplantation. Surgeries in the 1960s and 1980s attempted to use primate organs on human patients. So what does the future hold? More tests must be completed and approval is required, but if science can make this a safe and effective form of surgery, then expect to hear more about it in the future. Number 3. Necrobiotics. If you think this technology sounds like a title of a cheesy horror movie or the name of a death metal band, then you're not alone. Necrobiotics is a technology where the dead could be brought back to life in a way. In 2022, it was reported that researchers at Riese University in Houston, Texas, were able to take dead spiders and repurpose them as tiny grippers. All this took was a syringe, a needle, some glue, and giving it the old college try. But what could these tiny little spider grippers do that's useful? These spiders could be used for gripping tiny electronic components. Spiders have the ability to grasp objects that are 130% of their own mass. Spiders work differently than mammals. They have a hydraulic system of sorts for their grippers. And the researchers at Riese University said that while they have the gripping down, they'll need to find a way to make the spiders crawl. While this is technology in its infancy, could there be a future for necrobiotics? It's uncertain at the moment. However, tests could be performed on other insects or mammals for various studies. Although this isn't bringing the dead back to life in the traditional sense, it may be a study that proves to be beneficial. Number 2. AI. You may have heard a thing or two about AI. So what is it, and why is everyone freaking out about it? Simply put, AI, or artificial intelligence, is where a machine has the ability to perform a task that requires human intelligence. The story of AI goes back to the 1950s, and it's definitely blossomed since then. ChatGPT is an AI program that can provide a response based on the context and intent of a question posed by a user. AI is even producing artwork, and it has the ability to perform other tasks which may result in AI taking over certain jobs in the workplace. If something like ChatGPT can understand text as well as read and write, then AI could replace journalists or technical writers in the future. Paralegals and stenographers could be replaced in the legal profession. Also, expect to have AI introduced into the world of teaching. Your child or grandchild's teacher could be an AI program or machine. And in addition, you could have a medical screening or doctor's office visit with something that's AI. While this may be fascinating, it's a bit frightening for some. Replacing humans with robots is overwhelming, but AI should be used to benefit humanity, not to exploit it. And at number 1, quantum internet. We bank online, we do our taxes online, and we apply for mortgages online. And with all of this personal information online, we're definitely targets for identity theft. Imagine a situation where it's much easier for this to happen. Not only would our very own private data be vulnerable, but so too would be highly classified documents and sensitive data that countries don't want getting out. The quantum internet would use quantum physics, and it'll basically change the internet game. The University of Chicago explains the quantum internet as a network of quantum computers that will someday send, compute, and receive information encoded in quantum states. And while this sounds like a Sheldon Cooper type of project, it's something very impressive and frightening. Quantum computers and quantum internet could make cyber attacks more effective against the best supercomputers. The New York Times summed it up best when they said, "The technology will perform tasks in minutes that even supercomputers couldn't complete in thousands of years." Those who possess this technology will definitely have an upper hand, so it will be imperative that banks, companies, and countries get into the quantum internet game before it's too late. You can breathe easy for now, as this technology is in development and isn't perfect yet. Also, it's believed that the quantum internet may not replace the internet we use today, but keep an eye out for this topic, as it will definitely be one of those technologies of the future that will absolutely revolutionize everything. Which topic did you find the most interesting? And is there anything you think we left off the list? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.